Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, "My concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors." Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York ready to surrender to face these charges, but prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him. She did. And when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
This story about Sean Diddy Combs is turning into one of the most shocking sagas in recent celebrity history. Imagine being a global icon revered for decades, and then having your life turned upside down by allegations so grim they leave the world speechless. Diddy's situation is nothing short of a Hollywood thriller, but sadly for him, it's real life, and it's unfolding in the public eye.
Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs will try for the third time to get bail today while he awaits trial on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York City, where this hearing happened earlier today. Alex, there was already a hearing earlier this week looking at notes taken out of Sean Combs' cell. How could that impact his chances at bail? His team says that raiding his cell, monitoring his calls, is not allowed and not fair to allow him to prep for a trial.
You know, it'll be interesting to see if this ends up happening. We just got out of this hearing nearly 2 hours long, and they only talked about these notes at the very beginning. They discussed essentially whether or not they said the word legal on them, and there was a bit of a discrepancy from the defense. Essentially, they backtracked on this even just a little bit. Essentially, he has these binders, legal pads that, according to the photographs from the raid on his cell, did not say the word legal. All of a sudden, now they do. And the defense couldn't exactly say when the word legal was written, and that matters because if it said legal on any of these notes, that is part of attorney-client privilege. Those are things that should not have been taken out of his cell. So there is a big question about that. But Nate, the bigger issue here now is he going to get out? As of tonight, he is still going back to his jail cell. But next week, we will know whether or not he is going to be able to get out until his trial. So the big discussion here, according to the government, is can they trust him? He has proposed a whole laundry list of things that he's willing to do if they'll let him out. Things like 24/7 security, things like not speaking to anybody, not having internet access, phone access, unless it's through this 24/7 security company. But the government and pretrial services, who is separate from the prosecution, they're not buying it. They're saying that they cannot trust Sean Combs to not follow the law or to not follow the rules that he has even set out for himself. They say because he's already broken the rules that the department, the Bureau of Prisons, and his own counsel have laid out for him within a jail cell. So they're essentially saying if he can't do it there, how could he do it in the comfort of an apartment? They had tried to get him released to Star Island, his home on Star Island right in Miami, because it's an island and there's a dock there. The judge immediately said absolutely not, because in theory he could, escape that way.
Over the past few months, Diddy has been embroiled in legal battles that feel like they're straight out of a crime drama. His latest outburst in court has everyone talking, and the reasons behind his frustration paint a picture of desperation, power, and downfall. It's a saga that makes you question how someone so powerful could find himself in such a precarious situation.
Don't necessarily think he's a flight risk, but that is a concern. So what his defense team has now proposed instead is bringing him to an Upper East Side apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, where they say they would have 2 security guards inside of his apartment at all times, 1 downstairs. Again, the judge has not really said whether or not he is keen on this. He didn't really disclose if he's leaning one way or another, but he did ask a lot of questions about what that would look like. Again, the government not buying it, as well as pretrial services, which is the organization, the department that would have to make sure that everything was on the up and up.
Yeah, Alex, I wonder also, whether there was discussion of that now infamous video back from 2016 of Combs beating his girlfriend at the time, Cassie, the, entertainer. Did that get discussed at all in the hearing today?
It did, because the defense is saying that the prosecution basically took the video that CNN originally published and gave it to the judge in that exact form, which is that it was edited down and they say out of order. They say essentially that the video ends with Cassie being dragged back to the room. They say that's not how it happened. They say it's important to know that that is not how it happened. But according to the defense, they say, or according to the government rather, they say it doesn't really matter because what you can see is what happened there. Her getting beaten up, her getting kicked, all of these violent things in nature. And what I don't think has been reported enough is that the allegation here isn't just that it was a squabble between the two of them, that it was what the defense calls a lover's quarrel, but that inside the hotel room down the hallway, that there was a male sex worker there that was part of these freak-offs. So it's not just about the abuse that happened in the hallway, but the prosecution wants to bring this into evidence because of what was actually happening inside of that hotel room. Now, the defense maintains that that wasn't the case. They maintain that the fight actually happened because he was just trying to get his phone and clothing back. But even still, this video was even used today in the discussion about how violent they believe Sean Combs is and why he cannot be released on bail.
Yeah, Alex, I read about 90% politics all day long, but I mean, this is one of the stories that, breaks through, especially coming from the entertainment industry. Such a big entertainer for such a long time. Safe to say that this story not going anywhere anytime soon. National correspondent Alex Miller live in New York. Thanks for the insight.
Diddy has been trying to secure bail since his arrest in September 2024. Let's rewind for a moment. He was charged with serious crimes like C** trafficking, racketeering, and even allegations that go as far back as the early 2000s. We're talking about accusations of orchestrating drug-fueled parties, manipulating people, and allegedly silencing witnesses through bribes and threats. Prosecutors say he didn't just engage in criminal behavior, he built an empire around it.
This is Michael Moore. Michael's with me now. Let's just deal with the, if you will, the logistics before we turn to the gravamen. The refusal of bail in these circumstances, bearing in mind he'd flown to New York to turn himself in, so he was preempted by the police. Are you surprised that he was refused bail?
Well, I'm glad to be with you. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, the nature of these charges are so serious, the allegations are so serious that it's not surprising that this hearing he was denied bail. The judge has to look at things like whether or not he can be expected to return to court. Does he have the manner and means to perhaps evade law enforcement and not appear? Is he a flight risk, in other words? And so I think at this point the judge has decided that the fact that he was doing these acts in secret do not obviously lend much to his statements that he will be open and available. So I'm not surprised at all. But again, we will see what the district judge now does since the case has been, or the decision has been at least appealed up, whether or not there are some terms of bail that might make the court comfortable that he will show up for court.
Now, turning to the charges themselves, they are amongst the most serious, which would involve very long periods of incarceration if convicted. But it also raises the question, if there was a plea deal at some point in the future, to plead down from these very serious charges, the lesser accepted offences would also be serious and could end up in prison.
I think any plea discussion of the case, because you have such significant impact on the victims of the case, would necessitate that he be sentenced to prison in some way. I just don't think that a judge would take and place him on probation or some type of house arrest given the allegations that were made, no matter what the plea discussions were. And remember, the prosecution and a defendant can negotiate a plea amongst themselves, but a court has the decision finally on whether or not to accept that recommendation, and ultimately has the authority to make a decision about whether or not a prison sentence is appropriate. We operate under the federal sentencing guidelines. Those give the judge some parameters to consider things like whether or not somebody accepts responsibility, whether or not there have been an adverse impact on victims, whether or not there's been excessive fraud and deceit through the investigation of the case. Those things come into play as we talk about what might happen if there is a plea agreement that's ultimately reached.
It's important to remember, besides obviously he's innocent until proven guilty at the moment, but it's also important to remember that not being a nice person, being an unnice person, if you will, is not a crime. They're going to have to prove the elements of the offences in these cases. Just because he might not be likable is not enough to get you locked up.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. And this is...
Now imagine standing in court pleading for freedom, only to have judge after judge reject you. Diddy has faced 4 different judges, and all of them said the same thing: no bail. Each rejection chips away at his confidence. But it seems like the November 27th denial was the breaking point.
An indictment. These are merely allegations, and he has a right to have his case tried in court, and the government has to prove that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The indictment, the allegations, we heard from the United States Attorney in New York, these are sordid details. They are particularly troubling as it relates to whether or not the allegations are true, on whether or not certain people, victims in the case, were given drugs at the time to get them to do these sex acts, whether or not there's been some effort to blackmail or extort or silence victims in the case by the use of videotaped, and to call it pornography would probably be too nice. I would just say dark type of pornography. It sounds like these are things that a judge is going to have to consider as we go forward.
Finally, back to the logistics, if you will. He was prepared to turn himself in today, so we understand. The arrest removed from him the almost right to bail. Since I was going to turn myself in, I'm entitled to bail if I'd had turned myself in. By arresting him, the prosecution removed that possibility.
Well, they certainly removed the argument for him to make that he had turned himself in. It's mighty hard to, when you fly into town on a jet and you're there, to argue that there's no possible way you could be a flight risk. And that's one of the things the judge would consider. Another thing would be the nature of the charges, the allegations that were made. They spanned a long period of time. There were efforts to influence witnesses, it sounds like. At least that's been an allegation that has been made. These are all things that get put into that decision. The fact that he just would have turned himself in, that would have been in his favor. But there are so many other factors at play that it wouldn't have surprised me to see a court dig into those a little bit in making a decision on whether bail would be appropriate. And at this stage, a judge has determined that bail is not appropriate. He has a right, and has done apparently so, to appeal that decision and have another hearing on it. At that time, his lawyers will have a chance to make these arguments about the efforts that he was making to cooperate and to get there. The term cooperation, frankly, sometimes gets to be a little loosey-goosey, depending on who's wanting to use the argument to their benefit.
We'll talk more in the future. I'm grateful, sir. Thank you.
Prosecutors presented a laundry list of reasons why Diddy should remain behind bars, from allegations of tampering with witnesses to using intimidation tactics. They painted a grim picture of someone who would go to any lengths to protect his empire.
If I was to release those tapes, the world would shut down. Okay? If I showed one of these tapes, I'm telling you right now, the whole music industry and Hollywood, it would just grind down like this. They're all going to start pointing at each other like this, and it's going to be bad.
Oh, it's going to get bad, all right. Welcome to Popcorn Planet's Diddygate coverage. I'm Andy Signor, and there's been a lot of talk about this alleged memoir from Kim Porter. Her family is now deeming that it's fake. Diddy's own lawyer saying it's shameless, it's a scam. Amazon has actually pulled it because of Sean Combs' kids saying that it's fake. But now the author has gone and broken his silence and done an interview with The Art of the Dialogue. And it's pretty damning, guys. It's pretty fascinating. Now, look, I'd love to get this guy on the show. We are trying our best. This is the author. His name is Chris Todd. And he's here talking about a lot. We're going to go through some of these clips, and we're going to break this down even further in our live later today. There's also Jaguar Wright out there doing a lot of stuff. We got so many updates, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell for all alerts. Smash that all so you get notified. And when you get notified, hit that like and leave a comment down below. Helps get these videos in the algorithm, and it's important we get this stuff out there. Now, do I believe this guy? I don't know what to believe, but man, Art of the Dialogue, the guy who's interviewing here does not. He gets extremely defensive. It's kind of a hard watch. I'd love to have Chris on, and we're reaching out to him. Chris, come on the show. I want to play some of these clips, though, so you can get a gauge of what you think about this guy and is the author of this book. Does he sound legit? Here's some clips. Here's Will and Jada mentioned.
Can you explain how the alleged memoir portrays the nature of Kim Porter's relationship with Diddy? Was an open relationship mentioned in the book verified by any source close to them?
About their sex life?
An open relationship.
Means a sex life. Yes, we have sources, and multiple sources said they had an open relationship, yes. She says it too, so I'm going by what she's saying. She's saying they do. And that they have threesomes with multiple celebrities. They're listed in the book. So, yes. Am I going to go to Will Smith and Jada and ask them that? No, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Am I going to ask Jamie Foxx that?
Could you pull that up for me? I want to show you something.
Sure.
Now, again, you got to remember, this is a book that he got allegedly through a thumb drive, a USB drive stick that has not only Kim Porter's alleged diaries, but tapes and evidence. And he was given this after Kim's passing in a way to sort of get the truth out there by others. That's ultimately what this is about. Now, this guy's written some other books, other crime stories, etc., and that's ultimately, I guess, why he was selected. It's still a little confusing to me, but here's some more. Will Smith coming up again.
These are serious.
What do you
The A-list celebrities linked to Diddy and his alleged sexual assaults are trying to keep their identities private. That's according to Houston attorney Tony Busby. He says he's already privately settled some of the accused. That's after his firm sent out demand letters. Diddy is currently locked up and facing multiple charges, including racketeering and human trafficking. Despite 2 requests to be released, Diddy has been denied bail. His mother, Janice Combs, has spoken out for the first time since this arrest. She released a statement. It reads, "It is heartbreaking to see my son judged not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies. My son is not the monster they have painted him to be, and he deserves a chance to tell his side." Joining us to talk about it here on The Factor Uncensored tonight, we have defense attorney and former Harris County prosecutor Bioji Akingbala, Harris County Precinct 1 Trafficking Director Kathy Griffin-Grignon, and radio personality J Mac from 97.9 The Box. Glad to have you all here on The Factor Uncensored. So, J Mac, when you hear that there could be more people out there, more celebrities,
right,
who are already settling cases quietly, are you surprised? Are you shocked?
That's a smart thing to do. You don't want us in your business. You don't want to be on the Isaiah Factor.
The morning show, right?
On the morning show. And then you heard his mom. She's doing what a mom is supposed to do. If you pay my bills, I would say, hey, that's not the guy I know.
But then again, of course, you don't treat your mother that way. You may not tell your mother what's going on.
Come on, man. His mama know.
Oh,
his mama
knows.
know.
I'm being naive. The naivete is showing tonight.
Your mom is going to always know what you're doing. You might think she don't know, but she know.
Got it. Bioji, let's talk about some of the celebrities, which no names have been named as of yet, who may have settled these cases. Is that the prudent, smart thing to do?
I think considering that these civil cases are closely tied to the federal case that Diddy's facing, it's certainly a smart thing to do to perhaps try to get your name out of the public eye, get your name away from the specter of the federal investigators, and just try to settle your case privately, assuming that there is some sufficient evidence to believe that these civil attorneys have something on you.
Now, if you